This is the final part of Family Tree Turds. When the wife that Louis had put into the insane hospital died, he married a woman who had long been a servant in his parents' household. Her name was Sarah. She was born in 1882. Her family lived in the Lincoln Cotton Mill Flats, and those were apartments that were owned by the mill that you and your family could live in as long as someone worked for the mill. Kind of like miners' cottages. When Sarah was 19, a newspaper article cited the 19-year-old as being feeble-minded and that a court had ordered her to go to the Indiana School for Feeble-Minded Youth. This coincided with the death of her mother when her father decided she had to go. Sarah was soon back in Evansville and working as a domestic in the Cross household. During this time, she had 2 children. Her son was born in 1906, and on the 1910 census, he is listed as the adopted son of her employer. The space on the birth certificate for the father's name was left blank, as was the same space on his much later death certificate. Her daughter was born 10 years later in 1916, and at that time, the certificate says that Sarah was living in the Christian home, which was a place for unwed mothers. The space for the father's name was not blank, but it didn't have a name. It said, unable to get definite answer from mother feeble-minded. After she and Louis were married, they had 2 sons. Tony died at 2 months old of inanition, which is an old term for failure to thrive. And Francis died at only 3 hours old of pneumonia. Louis packed himself and Sarah up and they moved to a very sparsely populated area of rural Missouri. Now, Sarah's son would have been old enough to be on his own, but her daughter would only have been about 12 or 13. She doesn't show up on the 1930 census with them, and I can find no trace of her anywhere. Sarah died of pneumonia in 1934. In a very rare addendum to her death certificate, the coroner stated that she had died of pneumonia without any medical help or attempt to help her. He clearly felt Louis had neglected Sarah and was partially responsible. Louis's trail goes ice cold at this point. Maybe he went back home to live off some other relatives, or someone in rural Missouri finally had enough of him. Who knows?